Welcome back. Just finished up with Commissioner Doug Goring. I really like Commissioner Goring, and one of the things I like about him is he is not a flashy politician. He is a mud on his boots farmer. I mean, every time I have called Commissioner Goring, who, I mean, by dint of the fact, I mean, agriculture, one of our top industries. He also sits on the Industrial Commission, which is hugely influential in state government. But I have called him and reached him on his tractor
Yeah.
in the field. I mean, it's kind of a unique North Dakota thing. I like him a lot. He's kind of a no-nonsense guy. I will say the most interesting part of that interview for me was the labor thing, which was kind of not really something a facet of all this that I wasn't prepared to talk about. But I mean, you want to talk about why labor costs and stuff are going up. I could tell you when it's harvest time, there's a lot of people with Spanish accents in North Dakota. And I'm wondering right now, given the way the Trump administration, again, we have to enforce our immigration laws. The way they're going about doing it, where they're putting out videos, the president of the United States is talking about how people from Somalia should go home. It's not, if you have a foreign accent, it's not a very comfortable time in the United States of America right now. And that has to be having an impact on labor prices for construction and agriculture and food service and all the rest of them.
So first of all, I couldn't help but as we are interviewing Doug Goring is to think about his predecessor, Roger Johnson, who I managed a couple of his campaigns over the years. And North Dakotans like a certain kind of ag commissioner. It's ag commissioners who like are sort of aw shucks, not super polished, but man, they can talk and they're smart, right? And they
Right.
dive deep into the weeds, and that's sort of where Goring went. And frankly, this issue around tariffs is a terribly no-win situation for him. As a Republican in a state like North Dakota, he knows that tariffs are killing farmers and ranchers, but he has to be careful about the way he talks about it. And
He
it's
bristled
very
I
difficult.
bristled's the wrong word, but he certainly took note when you talked about self-inflicted, because I think the way he took that
Yep.
is you were saying, well, farmers voted for this.
No, and that was not what I meant.
That's not
It
what
was
you
that,
meant, but I
yeah.
think that's how he took it for a moment.
Right. And I think and the reason I said self-inflicted is we're talking about weather and all these things that are out of our control. But the reality are there's things that the United States is doing to our farmers and ranchers that are our choices to do. And we shouldn't do it. And going back to the immigration piece, I've always been frustrated that we as a country don't do a better job of cracking down on employers who are hiring folks that are not here legally. And again, they're two different things, right? I mean, he's talking about the skilled labor from South Africa.
The
And I
H2A,
Yep, and that's getting way more expensive. All these sort of skilled labor things are getting way more expensive. But we also do know that there are people who are not here legally who are working on farms and ranches, not just along the border in California, but all over this country. And I wish we'd crack down on those folks.
yeah, I think we should. I mean, if you really mean it about wanting, I mean, what's drawing them are the jobs.
Right.
And also, by the way, I mean, I'll remind the left, what's also drawing them are some of the government benefits that sometimes they can access, and
Sure.
we need to crack down on that. I mean, if we're serious about it. But on the other side, because I've always I forget where the term comes from, but my philosophy about immigration is I want a tall fence, but I want a wide gate. We benefit from workers. There are certain types of jobs that Americans just, for whatever reason, it's a cultural shift, it's an economic shift. Americans just don't want to do them. And frankly, American birth rates would not maintain our population but for immigration.
Well,
We
and
would
not to
be a
mention
shrinking, aging nation except for immigration.
we like cheap food as well, right? And so in order to have cheap food, we have to have cheap labor. And I think that was one of the things that Doug was saying that we've had these prices before, but when everything else gets more expensive, we have to accept that food's going to cost more money. And we've seen it the last several elections. People don't want to pay more. And so we have to figure this out. What does this business model look like when input costs are going so much higher, prices are stable? It doesn't work unless prices start to go up. And if prices start to go up, food prices go up. Americans don't want that. Just like we don't want our electricity prices to go up, right? We can talk all we want about green energy. At the end of the day, I want to turn on my light switch and I want it to be cheap.
Yeah.
So same as food.
I think the immigration thing, again, it's not one or the other. Like, we can choose to enforce our laws, because for a long time we weren't. We just looking the other way, and we weren't doing anything, and we've created this problem. We can enforce the law while also making it clear that if you obey our laws and you come here legally, you're welcome. And I don't think that's not the message from this administration at all. I think there are a lot of people for whom the case against illegal immigration is a fig leaf for a more nefarious sort of nativism, where they just don't want them here. And you heard President Trump articulating it. He didn't say he didn't want illegal immigrant Somalis here. He said he didn't want Somalis here. He said, go back to your country and fix that one. That's the attitude. And unfortunately, I think you want to talk about what's driving up prices. You can't access some of these labor forces that are good for American business. Well, that's it in a nutshell.
Yep. Gosh. And I think there was a time in North Dakota with Somali folks that we embraced Somali immigrants into our state. I think there was lots of press around young Somalis coming to North Dakota as being great stories of success and perseverance, and how things change quickly. But most importantly, Rob, this beef conversation.
Yeah.
It's got me frustrated that I can't go into my local butcher shop and have a bin of North Dakota meat without somehow connecting a rancher to the all these different things. That's dumb.
One of the
things
things,
to buy North Dakota grown meat without having to be a rancher myself, because I don't have the skills.
I think one thing that the left sometimes misses the boat on is they don't like big business. But what they miss is how often big businesses are protected by big government. And I think this is an instance. I mean, one thing that the pandemic exposed is how few meat processing companies we have. I mean, it's just like one or two or three that control the whole thing. So I'm basically, if you're buying meat at the supermarket, it's coming from one of those three. And that's bad on both sides of the equation. I think that's bad for consumers. And on the other side of the equation, I think it's bad for the people producing the chickens and the cows and the pigs and everything else. It's bad for them too, because they really only have one or two places they can sell to. Ultimately, I mean, the market is constrained and controlled. And I think what protects that, what has led to that status quo, are the things that are upsetting you. That it's not easier for somebody who's growing beef in North Dakota to be able to sell that directly to North Dakota-based stores, and not just butchers. I mean, I think the grocery store, Walmart, it should be easy for Walmart to maybe get a contract with a ranch, and obviously probably a slaughterhouse or something too, and just set up a thing where and they could proudly advertise, come to Walmart or come to Cashwise or come to Marketplace or wherever you're going, and buy beef that was grown 20 miles away from you.
Yeah,
Wouldn't that be a great thing? I think those businesses would probably go for it if they could do it. The problem is they can't do it.
Yeah.
Or if they can do it, there's so many hoops to jump for. It's not practical.
And I got to be honest, these programs by the feds on food safety are meant to keep us safe, right?
Sure.
But I feel much more comfortable. Again, I'm using just an example of a local butcher shop who advertises exactly like you said. This is where I get my beef from. They bring their cattle to our processing plant. We sell you the beef. That feels to me like a much cleaner, safer process than a cattle brings it to a slaughterhouse that goes to this meat processing plant, then gets shipped all over the world and whatever. Yeah. That seems like there's a lot more. And I'm not an expert in this, but I feel like if I can see where my food is being grown and then then I buy it, it feels, I mean, we talk about, farm to table all the time.
Yeah.
That's what people want.
How nice would it be if a butcher based in Minot or Bismarck or Fargo or something could go around to the grocery stores and say, we can sell you this much steak or hamburger or whatever on a weekly basis for this amount of money. and like just get in those stores and market, and then turn around and say, hey, ranchers, we can buy this many cattle for you because we have customers on the other side. And all of a sudden now you've got a supply chain within a 40-mile radius or something of the place where the people are buying it and eating it. I mean, wouldn't that be a great thing?
And the butcher shop doesn't have to be in Bismarck or Minot, right? It
Yeah.
could be in Garrison. It could be in Velva. It could-
Sure.
yeah, like
Yeah.
it just seems like, I know Edgley's got a new meat processing plant that there seems like a lot of opportunities here. And again, we talk a lot about at the end game. I mean, we talk about the consumer gets lost in health insurance and healthcare. Is the consumer getting lost in this process of, I mean,
Well, the consumer and the producer too.
right.
In this case. Yeah, I think there's a lot of things we could do. And one thing that really interests me is like we have state inspectors and we have federal inspectors. Are they really doing that much there? I feel like state of North Dakota inspectors are probably good at their jobs.
Yeah.
We probably do a good enough job where they could, maybe the USDA could just back off, right? Maybe there's some sort of a federal certification we can get like we do in other areas for, coal reclamation or some of these other things where the feds just say, yeah, state of North Dakota's doing a good enough job, we'll back off. Maybe just get them out. And the state of North Dakota can handle this stuff for beef sold in the state of North Dakota.
I don't know that I'm becoming a conservative, but I want to buy my beef from a place I know. I don't want to buy it from Argentina, no matter what President Trump says. I want to buy it from somebody who's producing that beef right here in North Dakota.
Right. And by the way, I don't necessarily even have a problem with international trade. I mean, some things, if we had to buy everything made in America, the cost of living would go through the roof. So
Rob,
I'm not against
we're
international
talking about
trade
beef here,
either.
man. We're talking about beef in North Dakota beef.
Right. No, the thing is ultimately like give people a choice.
Right.
Give people a choice. I think that if North Dakota beef is in the grocery store competing with beef from who knows where, North Dakota beef's going to win.
And North Dakotans would actually probably pay a little bit more for North Dakota beef.
And they would probably be willing to pay a little bit of a premium to know that I drove by the field where this cow was raised.
I want to see that. I want to look that cow in the eye before I eat it.
Yeah. Hey, I had another column this week, kind of switching gears, as we are prone to do, segues, but we kind of base it. I write about a lot of different things over the course of any given week. One thing that I wrote about was harm reduction, and it got a lot of reaction. And the reason I wrote about it is, I mean, there's debates in Fargo, Bismarck about these programs. If you don't know what harm reduction is, it's sort of a suite of it's a way of describing sort of a suite of policies to address things like mental health, addiction, homelessness. And what the policies are based on is what I perceive as pragmatism, as reality, which is that prohibition doesn't work. That's not an argument that I just want to legalize all the drugs. But we have to understand there's an upper limit on what it can deliver. We tried prohibition with alcohol. It's one of the most spectacular policy failures our nation's ever seen. The war on drugs has been going on for generations. We've invested trillions and trillions of taxpayer dollars. The president of the United States, his administration is now ordering missile strikes on boats in international waters under the auspices that they're fighting a war. That's a whole other issue. I don't think that's legal.
Well, also giving pardons to drug dealer. I mean,
also pardoning a Honduran drug dealer who is importing hundreds of tons of cocaine into the United States. Anyway, prohibition doesn't work. Even when we're exercising good policies, as long as there is demand for illicit drugs in the United States, there's got to be supply. It's an immutable reality of the marketplace. So what harm reduction policies do is, because we recognize that people are going to get high, we are going to build some programs that allow them to at least be relatively healthy about it. So that means clean needles. That means clean pipes. That means with this Narcan and some of these other drugs that can help address making those drugs available, making sure people have them, so that if there is an overdose, you can hopefully pull them out of it and get them to healthcare. Also, by the way, Good Samaritan laws, so that if maybe somebody is having an overdose and somebody who's with them, who might also be in possession of some illicit drugs, who might also have been using illicit drugs, they're not going to get in trouble for taking their friend to the hospital. some of these things, these are good policies. Now the critics say that they're enablement. And my argument to that is people are not using intravenous drugs because they have access to clean needles. If they didn't have access to clean needles, they just use whatever needles they can get their hands on,
Right.
which are sometimes going to be dirty needles, which are going to create ancillary problems like HIV and hepatitis. And now you've got somebody who's not only dealing with addiction, not only dealing with poverty, not only dealing with mental health, but now dealing with a serious illness on top of it. Are they a greater or lesser burden to their communities? So to me, it's not just harm reduction for the individual addict. It's also harm reduction for the communities. Because one of the problems of people who use, like if you've walked through an area where people are using intravenous drugs a lot, what do you see? Well, you see needles thrown on the ground. Well, if we create a program where those needles have some value, where there's a reason for the people who have them to keep them and turn them in to get clean ones, well, now the needles aren't on the ground for a kid to find, or they're not thrown in a garbage can for a sanitation worker to get stabbed with.
So a couple thoughts on this. One, I generally trust experts when it comes to this kind of thing, right? I'm not an expert in how to deal with addiction. So experts think these programs work. And so I tend to agree with people who are experts, not, no offense, Rob, political commentators like you or I or other people
Sure.
who write in the forum.
Right.
But the other thing, I think the people who are against this and think that somehow clean needles and those kind of programs somehow enable addicts is so simple, is so naive to the realities of addiction, right? We can't, people can't just go cold turkey off of heroin, right? And again, these are programs that make sure they stay safe. Maybe they do want to get clean. And this is a first step to getting clean or that kind of thing. But just the idea that if we just ignore them, if we just ignore them, their addiction will go away. It is naive at best.
Well,
but it's mean as well. It's mean.
Sure. It's lacking some compassion. I would rather them, in addition to all their other risky behaviors, I'd also like them to be at risk of communicable diseases. I'd like them to be at risk of overdose and everything else. Listen, none of them can recover if they're dead.
Right.
So I just don't. And listen, addiction is something that cuts across social and economic. A lot of times addicts, I mean, maybe they're in when they're in the end game or the serious throes of their addiction, maybe they're poor because they've lost their jobs or whatever. But a lot of them started very prosperous from good families with good education. I mean, it's not a poor person's affliction. Rich families have people who struggle with addiction. Poor families have people who struggle with addiction. Middle-class families. It's everybody. It's everywhere. This can happen to anyone. And so I want, when you're walking by, this isn't the detritus of our society. This is someone's son or daughter or loved one or cousin. Somebody loves that person, and we're obliged to help.
And the reality is the rich and powerful have access to a lot of different programs
Sure.
that can get them through it. I'm listening to the Joe Biden Original Sin book right now, which, by the way, just infuriates me at every Democrat on a national level. It's the Jake Tapper book.
Yeah.
But talking about his two kids who have dealt with addiction, including Hunter, they have access to different programs that maybe a middle-class person who's living in Fargo, fallen on hard times, who's now living on the streets in Fargo, don't have access to.
Right.
And so if we are a society that's supposed to care about everybody, these kind of programs are a way to keep people alive, and we should be pro keeping people alive. If we're pro-life, we should be pro keeping people alive.
I got a call yesterday about that column from somebody who works in the law enforcement community in Fargo. And what I was telling them, because they're very afraid that there's going to be a push during the next legislative session to move away from these programs. And my argument to them is you can't, I think, to convince voters that we need to keep these things in place, like compassion and empathy are only going to get you so far. You have to make pragmatic arguments. And the pragmatic argument for this is people who in addition to being addicted, get AIDS or get hepatitis or any of the other myriad diseases they can get from dirty needles are going to cost taxpayers more. Right. I know maybe that's a mercenary way of
No,
looking at
it's
it.
not. You're right. It goes back to the conversation on Wednesday about health insurance. If those people have AIDS or whatever, and they don't have health insurance, they're jacking up like it's going upstream.
Also, if you create a point of contact with that community, the community, especially the community who may be to the point of living on the streets or what have you, if you create a point of contact where you can build some trust, you can bring your dirty needles in, you'll get clean needles, you'll get some that, you'll get a kit, you'll get a blanket, maybe you'll get some meals, right? You're building up trust. We're here to help. We're not judging you. We're trying to help you. Maybe there's a point where you can divert that person into a recovery program, and maybe they get on a different track, because the track they're on leads to crime, right? The track they're on leads to maybe they end up in a jail cell. Well, once they're in a jail cell, what does that cost the taxpayers?
Yep.
Once a law enforcement officer has to come down because they're acting erratically in a park or they're sleeping somewhere where they shouldn't be sleeping, a law enforcement officer has to respond to a call. What does that cost the taxpayers? These programs, and the hard part of it is it's difficult to quantify, because you're put in a position of having to prove a negative. The people who participate in these programs, what would they have done if they weren't participating in the program? I don't know how to quantify that for you, but I can tell you rationally, it makes sense to build relationships with them, build trust with them, and be able to at least get some of them into treatment programs, while also accepting the fact we're not gonna like if the thing is these programs aren't reducing addiction. Well, they're not intended to reduce addiction. Nothing's gonna. The trillions of dollars we spend on the DEA and everything is not reducing addiction either, right? But we have to do some of it. We have to do this. So, I mean, that's my argument. It has to be a pragmatic argument. There is a benefit to the taxpayers here. People need to understand that.
It's similar to programs about help, recovering reentry, right? I mean, people coming out of prisons and making sure that they have a community when they come out of
Right.
prison, so then they don't fall back into the same issues.
A point of contact to help them get housing, help them
Right.
get
All
jobs,
of
help
these
them get
different-
education.
This idea that we're just going to throw somebody who's an addict or somebody who's coming out of prison to the streets and slap them on the butt and say, good luck out there, and don't think they're going to fall into the same problems that they've already had is again, simple. It's a simple talking point that might get a lot of clicks on if you write about it, or it might get votes for politicians in these cities. But I mean, these are real complicated issues, and just to say I don't like the idea of clean needles, or I don't like the idea of other harm reduction programs isn't taking reality into consideration.
Well, I think we have to, because it is. I understand that it can be a provocative idea to give somebody who's an addict. I mean, it sounds like buying an alcoholic a drink.
Right.
I get that. I can superficially,
Or
it
certainly a
seems that
shot
way.
glass.
Right. And so I can understand that reaction, but I also think if you carry it, like if that's your argument, what you're really building that on is the idea that somebody who has an addiction problem, or to your point, if we're opposing programs to help people coming out of jail, somebody who's committed a crime or made some mistakes in their life, that they're not worth anything anymore, is what you're saying. And I would make two arguments. First of all, personalize it, because very few, if any, families living in North Dakota don't have a member of the family who hasn't made some mistakes in their life, maybe been arrested, maybe gone to jail, maybe struggled with addiction. Every family has that.
Every family.
So do you want your loved one to have had no hope, to just be cast aside? We don't care about them? No, you don't want that. The other thing is, when you cast them aside, there is a lowest common denominator that at some point the public has to deal with them. The thing is, how are we going to be upstream, where we're giving them needles and we can maybe get them some help? Or are we going to wait till they've done something awful and now they're in a jail cell, and now the only place to deal with them is the criminal justice system, where it's hugely expensive, by the way. And by the way, if they're in the criminal justice system, that means there's a victim somewhere and somebody who got harmed.
Right. And you're making the conservative argument for all of these things, right? This isn't a left-right thing. I think that
I don't want to dismiss, if you would call it the bleeding heart liberal argument either.
Right.
I feel the empathy and compassion too.
No, understood. But there is the real, like, so often these discussions we have are about what's like right in front of our face, and we don't do what we need to do to go upstream and to avoid these issues. And so again, like, could connect this to investing in pre-K. We could, in
Our
so
interview
many
from
different,
earlier in the week talking about what if we get dental care in the schools?
right.
So it's upstream so that before kids get tooth decay
Right.
and it creates an expensive health problem, we're protecting their
Obvious-
teeth upstream.
The same thing on mental health services to children before they, like, there's just so many things that if we do a better job on the front end, it helps us with very, very expensive society issues down the line. So
I think the thing, I mean, there's this idea where if I oppose these programs, then I don't have to pay for them. But let me tell you,
you're going to pay for them.
paying for this stuff one way or the other. You can either do it later down the timeline when it's a lot more expensive and the stakes are a lot higher, or we can try to do it upstream. And we're never, and also accepting we're never going to solve it.
Right.
This is always going to be with us, but we can do a better job of managing it.
But I think no matter left or right, I think people would agree they'd rather invest early on in programs that help avoid the very expensive pain and suffering later on in life. And if you're right, if addiction was going to go away, we would have gotten rid of addiction. But that's not the way the world works.
And by the way, the cost of these harm reduction, I'm specifically talking about the harm reduction, the needle exchanges and stuff. I mean, it may sound like a lot of money. It's a rounding error compared to what we spend on drug enforcement and everything else. These programs are relatively cheap. Yeah. And they're worth maintaining. All right, we're going to stop there. Thank you so much for listening as always. What do we have? We actually have some people booked for next week. I think we have.
I can't wait to find out.
We have Kelly Armstrong on next week on the 10th.
Really?
Wednesday the 10th. Kelly Armstrong's going to be coming on. I thought it'd be nice to get an end of the year.
No, I think that's great. We haven't had him on for a minute, and I want to talk. I want he and I to gang up on you about cell phone bans
again. Come on. All right. Well. I don't know. I don't know how interested our listenership's going to be. There's a lot of good things we can talk to the governor about. Obviously, he was one of the people. Some of these, the furloughed programs thing, we came through the government shutdown. Obviously, that's over. But I think there's an interesting conversation to be had about what the state of North Dakota can do to be more proactive in the face of more federal dysfunction. I really think we need to be prepared for it. The state of North Dakota government, agree with it or not, and obviously there's things that our state does that both you and I disagree with. There's some things we do that we both love. But the state of North Dakota functions.
Yep.
North Dakota government works. The federal government right now is not working.
Yeah, I'd love to talk to him about the Commerce Department. I'd love to talk to him about ethics. I mean, again, anytime we have the governor on, we have to figure out how to limit the
how to shoehorn
things that I'd like to talk
all the good
about.
stuff in to talk about. Yeah. All right, so that's coming up next week. We'll have another guest too for the Friday show next week. Thank you so much for listening. Remember, you can always follow us. YouTube has become a great place to go for Plain Talk. Be sure to subscribe to us there. We have bonus content. We have clips. It's a very rich YouTube channel. So, and in a really great way. I mean, the nice thing about YouTube is if you're looking for something in particular, you can search our YouTube page because it automatically transcribes so it can find. I use it, in fact, when I'm going back to try to find something that we talked about previously because I want to write about it again or mention it again. Anyway, it works great. It's a great way to engage with the show. Spotify, we're everywhere you get podcasts, we're there. At Plain Talk ND is our handle on like TikTok, Twitter, Facebook, all that. Thank you so much for listening. We'll talk again. That's it for today on Plain Talk, the voice of North Dakota politics. Plain Talk is a production of Forum Communications Company. Got a question, comment, or suggestion? Leave us a voicemail or send us a text message at 701-587-3141. That's 701-587-3141. If you haven't subscribed to Plain Talk yet, you can find us on YouTube or your favorite podcast platform like Spotify or Apple Podcasts. For those of you who are already hooked, give us a rating or review. And don't forget to share or tell a friend. Special thanks to my co-host Chad Oban, and from myself and everyone at Plain Talk, thanks for listening.
mean, that seems like it should be an easy thing to do. Damn government.